Hey guys, Sheldon here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at Ghost Recon Wildlands Open Beta. I won't be covering the basics of the game in this video since I've already spoken about those in my previous video about the closed beta, but I will leave a link in the description box below for those of you who are interested in seeing more of an overview of the game. In this video I'm going to talk specifically about the new area, the difficulty, playing the game without the HUD, and the issues that accompany that, along with some of the other issues that I came across during my time with the game. Now, I put over 20 hours into the open beta. We played on extreme difficulty settings with no HUD for the entirety of the multiplayer playthrough. However, with the AI teammates, it's an impossibility to play without markers, which I will talk about in a little bit. Now, in the open beta, we had access to the Montauk region, a 5 out of 5 skull region, versus the starting area, which we had access to in the closed beta, which is a 1 out of 5 skull region. So it seems that the skulls represent the enemy's preparedness and equipment rather than the actual difficulty of the AI itself. And what I mean by that is that the bases have alarm towers, which will summon helicopters, their drone jammers, mortars, their SAM sites, and the enemies in general have better gear than the enemies in the starting region. So there's more reason to be aware when you approach the bases and that kind of thing, and I think this is what they mean by more difficult. The AI itself is not harder in these areas. The difficulty of the AI itself, how quickly they spot you, how accurate they are, and how much damage they do, is governed by the difficulty slider in the game. As I said, I played the game on Extreme, which is the hardest difficulty in the game, which replaced the previously named Ghost setting, which wasn't particularly difficult in the closed beta. And I'll say that the first thing I noticed when playing on Extreme is how quickly you can die. It really only takes 1 to 2 shots for you to be downed, which wasn't the case on the Ghost setting in the previous beta. And to me, that's a good thing. It definitely increased the difficulty of the game. Unfortunately, it comes with a caveat. It means that when you crank up the difficulty to extreme, the AI also benefits from hive mind mentality, it seems. So if one of them knows where you are, for example, they all seem to know exactly where you are. And I mean exactly, and they'll all start making their way to your position. If you're down, they will automatically start heading towards your teammate, even if they have not been seen. This is not always the case, but I have seen it happen often enough to think that it's potentially going to be an issue and it needs to be addressed. And the other thing is, even with the lowest level grunts in the first region of the game, they have an uncanny ability to 360 no-scope you. Giving the AI godly aim and awareness, I think, is a lazy way to up the challenge in any game, especially in a stealth game where if you haven't been seen, they for some reason still know where you are. And I think this area of the game needs some work. So the Ghost Recon developers have spoken about the customizability of the UI, the option of playing without HUD for the ultimate challenge. It all sounds good on paper, doesn't it? Until you actually try it, at which point you'll realize that the options you're given are not nearly as customizable as the developers would have you believe. Now, the reason I bring up playing the game without a HUD, because I see that many people are playing Ghost Recon Wildlands without the HUD to increase the difficulty of the game, because let's be honest, it's not particularly difficult even in the new zone on Extreme, and also to increase the authenticity of their Ghost Recon experience. With the HUD on, all the enemies' locations are marked all the time, so it removes the need to be cautious around every corner because you can see where these guys are coming, you can see where they're coming up on you. It removes the need to communicate with your team effectively about the locations of the enemies because again, you know where everyone is all of the time. It's basically like a wall hack. So many people, including myself and my friends, choose to try and play Ghost Recon Wildlands without these markers and by extension without the HUD. Now there are a number of settings that are offered in the HUD customizable options. Unfortunately, the one that really matters is an all or nothing switch, and that's markers. I would argue that none of the HUD settings make as much difference to Ghost Recon's difficulty experience as the marker setting, specifically the removal of enemy tags. Anybody who wants to experience this game at its most hardcore will want enemy tags disabled. Now, there is a problem, however, with these settings. Even when you have all of the HUD elements off, the enemy locations are still displayed in real time on the large map, when they've been spotted of course. And there's absolutely no way to disable it, which is strange because I have the Ghost Recon Wildlands HQ app on my tablet, which is basically serving as another map in the game if you don't want to keep looking at your map. However, on the app you can actually disable and choose what icons you do and do not want displayed on your map, and enemy locations is one of them. So why this is not an option in the actual game map is beyond me. So because the enemies are displayed on your map, they are by extension going to be displayed on your minimap as well. So naturally you will have that disabled, since the whole reason you're turning off markers is because you don't want to be told where the enemy is. The issue now is that you have no compass. So the only way you can get your bearings is to keep looking at the big map, which constantly takes you out of the game, or alternatively you have to take out your binoculars, or alternatively you have to send up a drone. You will have no objective location markers in your actual game view, so again you'll need to keep going out to your map to check where you're headed, even if you know which direction you're supposed to be going in. None of the supplies are going to be marked on your map either, and the collecting of supplies part of the game is probably one of the more tedious parts of the game, since each player is going to have to collect them individually, but now you also won't know if you've missed one. So I found that even when I went back with the AI on Extreme, there were numerous supply crates that I had missed in my multiplayer playthrough. The other thing is, now your teammates can't put markers in the world with Q to let you know where they're talking about, and they can't put markers on the map to show you where to go if they're looking at the map to give you directions. And they can't even look at the map for you and tell you to head to bearing 271, for example, since you have no compass. And on top of all of that, if you are playing single player, disabling the markers also disables sync shot. So there will be no way for you to mark enemies to have your team take them down. And I mean no way at all. If you turn off the markers, your AI teammates effectively become lemmings that just follow you around and have next to no usefulness. Now I imagine many people who want to increase the difficulty of the game really just want to remove the enemy markers in the game. They don't want to increase the difficulty of knowing where they are going, and or that they want to make it more tedious to find supplies. They just want to increase the difficulty of the game, not increase the inconvenience of the game's functions. So why not allow players to choose what markers they do and do not want enabled, so they can actually tailor the experience, so the HUD really is truly customizable. Why not let players choose what information they want displayed on the map/minimap, so give players a choice to make the game harder and not more inconvenient and not more annoying. The next setting I want to talk about is the crosshair to disable all crosshairs. The problem is, if you're on a mounted gun or in a helicopter with a weapon, you won't be able to aim properly. Why? Because you have no crosshair. There really should be a separate option for disabling the crosshair when on foot versus when in a vehicle. Okay, so moving on, playing solo with AI versus co-op with friends is, as you would expect, a very different experience. Both are enjoyable in my opinion. Although in some cases on Extreme I found that doing some of the camps and the outposts with the AI was actually easier than when playing with my friends. The AI doesn't make mistakes and it doesn't miss, which I can't say for myself. There were so many times where I set off the alarm or I missed a shot and I got us all in trouble. The other thing is also the AI doesn't seem to get spotted by its enemy counterpart quite so easily. So it seems they can get relatively close to the enemy and the enemy is either blind or whatever, but they don't get seen. And finally, it seems that when you sync shot with your AI teammates, they don't necessarily need a perfect line of sight. There have been many instances where none of my teammates could possibly have gotten clear shots on the targets I marked, but yet for some reason were able to perfectly sync shot them all. Outside of that, the beta was full of bugs. The game comes out in 2 weeks and I would have expected significantly more polish at this stage of development. Enemies appearing in different locations for me and my other teammates, where I can see a guy standing somewhere, my friend can't see him and he's shooting at me, so it looks like his bullet's going up and then sideways, like it's rebounding off something. But when my friend says, no, that guy is standing on the roof right next to me. You know, things like that. Graphical glitches, clipping through the ground when you're lying down, the inability to switch grenades, so the key just stops working, or the inability to use drones. So you just, no matter how many times you press Z, you can't send up your drones anymore until you either respawn or fast travel. And all of these issues I came across more than once during my time with the game, and my friends came across these issues obviously as well. There also seems to be a texture loading issue in the game where, like Rage and the id engine, where you turn around and the texture slowly load in while you're staring at it. In Wildlands, you can kind of create this by looking around. If you look in one direction, you turn 180, look in the other direction, you'll see the textures loading. And suddenly if you turn back again, you'll see the textures loading. This does depend on the area you're in, but it's pretty easy to recreate, and I do hope that they sort that out. The other thing is I felt that the world feels a little bit empty. I mean, the world looks great, and I will say that in Ghost Recon Wildlands, some of the best weather effects I've seen in a long time. It really manages to create a great atmosphere, but the world feels just a little bit too empty. I do wish there were more events happening around the zone, more patrols and foot patrols wandering around in the actual landscape and stuff like that. Outside of the actual bases and outposts, most of the locations just don't have enough enemies either. You know, 2 or 3 guys, maybe 5 guys, and that's like a 1-minute encounter, 30-second encounter, something like this. Even in the missions where you have to defend the communications trailer, where you're attacked by waves of enemies, the waves are relatively small and there's like only 2 or 3 of them. So I do wish that there were more enemies and more waves and just more people, you know, more things to fight. I mean, I have no issue with traveling around beautiful landscapes to get to encounters, but all too often I find that the travel is relatively long and the encounters are relatively short. The performance also needs some work as well. It's better than it was in the closed beta, but I do feel that it can still be improved. The driving also had some work, it seemed. It definitely feels better than it did in the closed beta. It's not perfect by any means. The flying kind of remains the same, so that's also just a matter of getting used to it. It's not too bad once you get used to it, I suppose. Now, I know for the majority of the time I've been listing negative points, but that's not to say that I haven't enjoyed Ghost Recon Wildlands Open Beta. I have, and quite a lot actually. I've been pretty active on the Reddit making posts, and that's because I want the game to be better. I want them to improve on the parts that I think are possible at this stage to improve. I don't think they are going to be able to fix all of these issues, at least not by launch. I don't imagine that the game is going to be much different. The zones are going to play out in pretty much the same way, all 21 of them almost certainly. Getting major intel to unlock story missions, collecting supplies, collecting weapon parts, collecting intel, and doing side missions. And of course, screwing around in what is a very beautiful open world landscape. I think that if you enjoy the gameplay loop, which I have in both the closed beta and in the open beta, and you can deal with some of the issues and inconsistencies that seem to be present in the game, it has a lot of potential to be a great deal of fun if you maybe don't take it too seriously. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with the game, as I said, despite all of these issues, and I'm looking forward to its 7th of March launch, and I really do keep my fingers crossed that they are going to fix some of these issues. So I think that wraps up the video for Ghost Recon Wildlands Open Beta. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like or dislike, share or comment below. I've been Sheldon, and I'll see you guys next time.